Halo, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Fadilla Milinia Hakim. I'm from Group 1. Our group was discussed about our material, that is review of translation analysis and evaluation. But in here, I will explain about definition of translation and some problem non-equivalent in translation analysis. Okay, here we go. Definition of translation. We know that translation is translate the source language into target language. But according to March 1988, translation rendering the meaning of the text into another language in the way that the author intends the text. And then the next, I will explain about translation analysis. In the translation analysis, we have problem non-equivalence. According Monabaker 1992, non-equivalence happens at what level? It means that the target language or TL has a direct equivalence for a word which occurs in the source language or SL. Okay, I will explain about some problem in non-equivalence. The first is culture-specific concept. Based on this problem, the source language word may express a concept that is totally unknown in the target language culture. The concept may be abstract or concrete. For example, like the source language English and the target language is Indonesia. If in English we call our device is honey or baby, but if we translate into target language Bahasa Indonesia, the translate is madu or bayi. It will be problem, right? Okay, the next problem is the source language concept isn't lexical in the target language. This problem occurs when the source language express a word which is easily understood by people from other culture, but it is not lexical. For example, like the word safari has no equivalent in many languages, although it is express a concept which is easy to understand. It means that concept that is known by people in some areas doesn't always have the lexis in every area. And the next common problem is the source language word be semantically complex. According Bollinger and Sears, at 1968, this was fairly common problem in translation. Words didn't have to be morphologically complex, be semantically complex. In other words, a single word which consists of a single morpheme could sometimes express a more complex set of meaning than a whole sentence. For example, like the word apa dia in bahasa. But in English conversation, it's like I tried my best, come as early as possible to get seats, but what can I do? Everywhere has taken. Okay, that is from me. And the next common problem will explain about my friends. And thank you.
Okay, I'm Rofiqotul Wardiyah. Here I will continue the explanation about common problem in equivalence. The next problem is source and target language make differences in meaning. It's like one expression in the source text might be differently expressed in the target text. As an example, in the sentence "she was going out in the rain," it can be understood differently in Indonesia. It can be dia pergi keluar tanpa tahu kalau hujan sedang turun, or it also can be dia sengaja pergi keluar walaupun hujan sedang turun. And the next problem is the source and target language make difference distinction in meaning. Sometimes in one language there are a specific term for a word, but neither in the another language. Example, English has specific term for house as bungalow, cottage, villa, and mansion, which is not found in Indonesia. The next problem is the target language lacks specific term or hyponyms. Usually, language tend to have general word or superordinate, but lack specific one. Since each language make only those distinctions in meaning which seem to relevant to its particular distinction. For example, in Indonesia, there is word membawa. Nah, this word have specific term which not have direct equivalence in English. The next problem is differences in expressing meaning in form. For example, English has many couplets such as employer or employ, trainer or train, and payer or pay. It also makes frequent use of suffixes such as ish and able. Arabic has not really mechanism like that, so they are often replaced by an appropriate paraphrase depending on the meaning they convey. Example, retrievable as can be retrieved and drinkable as suitable for drinking. Now for the next problem is the use of loanword in the search tag. Once a word is loaned in a particular language, we cannot control its development or its additional meaning. For example, dilettante is a loanword in English, Russia, and Japan.
Halo, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm Widia Septiyani. I will explain the materials about translation evaluation. What is translation evaluation? Okay, translation evaluation is a method of examining translation that focuses on marking or process. Carbonell and Weeks state that machine translation evaluation is better understood than machine translation. Translation evaluation has several techniques. There are 6 points. The first one is round-trip translation. Translate from a search language to a target language and back to the search language with the same engine. Round-trip translation is a poor predictor of quality. And the second is human evaluation. There are 2 points. Automatic language processing advisory committee. The variables are intelligibility and fidelity. Intelligibility is a measure of how understandable, and fidelity was a measure of how much information the translators retain compared to the original. And the second is Advanced Research Project Agency. Adequacy and fluency. Adequacy is rating of how much information is transferred between the original and the translation, and fluency is a rating of how good the translation is. And the next point is good. The closer a machine translation is to professional human translation, the better it is. The metric calculates scores for individual segments, generate sentence, then average these scores over the whole covers for a final score. And the fourth is NIST. The NIST metric is based on the Blue metric but with some alteration, where Blue simply calculates and grain precision, adding equal weights to each one. NIST also calculates how informative a particular and rhyme is, the more weight is given. And the next point is word error rate. The metric is based on the calculation of the number of words that differ between a piece of machine translated text and a reference translation. And the last is Meteor. Meteor also includes some other features not found in other metrics, such as synonym matching, where instead of matching on the exact word form, the rendering as well in the translation count as a match. That's enough for me. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, I'm Destiana Anggrarinta, and the next material is about types of translation. The first is accuracy test. Translator must to communicate meaning accurately. A simple example to use is when the curse uses the numeral 1, and a translator decides to use a word like single or solitary. It's depending on context. because the purpose of translator is to communicate meaning. And the second is about readability test. It's intended to state degree of ease whether a translation is easy to understand its meaning or not. Poems with high readability are easier to understand than low writing. Conversely, writing that is less legible is more difficult to read. This readability includes choice of words from dictionary, sentence construction, paragraph organization, and grammatical elements, and then size of type, punctuation, spelling, space between lines, and then size of margin. And the next is about translation should be natural. In the forms of meaning and structure grammar, so the translator should make the translation be equivalent and natural in the forms of meaning and structure grammar. They should do it and argue to make the readers of the translated version do not realize that they are reading a translation product. And the last material is about translation quality assessment criteria. Hurtado Aldir proposed 4 basic principles that must be considered. The first is about testers or evaluators must be faithful to the criteria established and don't test. And the second is assessment criteria must be considered why, for what, and whom the assessment was carried out. And the third is about object assessment. It's like what is being assessed. And the last is about evaluator. Should be considered several indicators so that he is able to recognize whether the test has test competence. Okay, I think now, and thank you. And the last I say wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.